I'd like to introduce you now to Dr. Myers. He is the founder of AmericanPainInstitute.org, and without him, this program would not exist. Dr. Myers, welcome to your program, and please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the beginning of Chronic Pain Patients Advocacy Week.
Well, Pain Patient Advocacy goes back to my becoming aware of this tremendous problems that chronic pain patients are having. Particularly, I was working in Fort Smith, Arkansas for a temporary assignment with a locum tenens company. And I worked for a doctor who had gotten his medical license taken away, and his DA certificate taken away because he was treating chronic pain patients. A lot of these patients I would see, and I had never treated that many people in chronic pain before. But they would have certain problems. I'd try to send them over to the hospital, to the emergency room, and the doctor there wouldn't even want to see them. And I've never seen such a disrespected, mistreated, bigotry committed against group of patients in my entire medical career. And so I began to have a little bit of understanding of what their problem was, and they definitely need to get organized because there were so many things that were said against them that weren't true. They were treated like they were drug addicts. They were treated like they were the people responsible for the drug dealing in the community. And I said, well, look, you guys got to get yourself organized so your voice can be heard. So I've been organizing them. I have a background in civil rights and human rights activism. So I decided we need to change the situation for these chronic pain patients. And that was there in Arkansas. And I began to organize them, and we were able to get the 2003 Arkansas Chronic Pain Treatment Act passed. From picketing, protesting, writing letters, calling the state representatives, the governor, the state senator, and Governor Huckabee, who was the governor then, did sign the bill that we worked so hard, that they really worked so hard to advocate the Chronic Pain Treatment Act. And then we set our eyes on Washington, D.C., because a lot of problems they were facing had to deal with agencies like the CDC, FBI, law enforcement, Department of Justice. So we organized our first March on Washington in 2003, followed by a March on Washington in 2004. Americans in Pain, March on Washington, Silent No More. And so we were able to get thousands of signatures on petitions that while we in Washington, D.C., we delivered to key members of the Senate, key members of the House on the health committees and the Judiciary Committee. We were able to have an impact because these different folks came with us from all over the country. We set aside time for them to go to their representative's office and discuss with them what they were going through. And so I realized then that the only way to get the situation changed for the treatment of chronic pain and all the issues associated with it is you have to get Congress to act. And the way you get Congress to act is the people with their constituents in chronic pain and their family members are going to have to get involved in advocating before they're a member of Congress their concerns about being treated for chronic pain.
Right.
One of the sad things that I ran into was that the number of suicides, I know of at least 13 patients that committed suicide when the doctor that was treating them that got lost his license and his DEA, those people could not get any treatment for anyone, and they chose suicide over living with chronic pain.
That's happened to several of my.
Forgot that.
Yeah, that's happened to several of my patients, and a lot of patients in Southwest Virginia when they lost their doctors. The suicides were present as a result of it.
Well, I never forgot that, and I thought that was just a case of inhumanity. Man's inhumanity against man. It was the medical system. It was the government that had these vulnerable people who were patients in chronic pain with their non-opioid abusers. Now, a patient in chronic pain is a non-opioid abuser, a person who takes their medications as prescribed by their doctor. Less than 1% of these people have a problem with addiction. So you have a number of chronic pain patients who are non-opioid abusers who chose suicide because they couldn't be treated. And I became even more aware of the fact that there's been so many stereotypes and lies on people who are treated for chronic pain and the doctors who treat them, that the only way to change the situation for pain patients to get active advocating for themselves. So we started Pain Patients Advocacy Week in 2005, and I went back to Washington, D.C., and organized a Frederick Douglass Freedom March to help people to understand the undertreatment of African Americans in chronic pain, and to make folks aware that there was a large amount of discrimination in the treatment of chronic pain by the medical systems, ERs, doctors' offices, and clinics, and we were there for almost 4 hours with the march, dramatizing the seriousness because of the color of one's skin, how they get treated differently in terms of chronic pain.
Correct. There seems to be a stigma about if it's a black person coming to your office asking for pain medicine, that they are just a drug pusher trying to get pills. I didn't feel that way in my practice. I was actually more suspicious of the white folks, but I know in a lot of parts of the country there is that prejudice.
Well, the problem comes in when you go to the emergency room for treatment.
Yes.
And studies have shown that a black person can show up to the emergency room with the exact same injury as a white patient, and the white patient will get the pain medications they need, narcotic pain medicines on a short-term basis to deal with their complaint. But the African-American patients won't get anything, or maybe some Motrin or some non-steroidals. And so I became aware of how this situation affected the sickle cell patient community. Sickle cell disease is mostly associated with African Americans here in the United States. It has to do with the legacy of slavery and the fact that that legacy goes back to generations of Africans who arrived in this country in the belly of slave ships, who brought the sickle cell trait and sickle cell disease with them. And when these people show up to the emergency room, they don't get proper treatment.
Right. Because
of the fact that they are considered drug addicts, drug dealers. And the problem is you have a vaso-occlusive pain crisis. And what I mean by that, the problem with sickle cell is that the cell sickle during a pain crisis can cause tremendous amount of pain in the particular body where the circulation is cut off. It's called a vaso-restrictive of the blood vessels. And if you don't get hydration, pain medicine to cover your pain, and oxygen, the pain crisis can lead to permanent damage in that part of the body where you're having a vaso-occlusive attack. And so, particularly now, in today's time, when you have these opioid guidelines that were put out by the CDC in terms of the use of opioids in the treatment of pain, doctors are afraid to take care of sickle cell patients properly, because those guidelines that the CDC wrote on the treatment of patients with opioids for chronic pain specifically state they should follow the NIH guidelines, the National Institute of Health guidelines, when treating a patient with sickle cell and vaso-occlusive problems with the capillaries, that they should use the NIH guidelines, which state give hydration, oxygen, and adequate amount of pain medicine to cover their pain, and then titrate down. So what's been happening is that sickle cell patients report to the emergency room because they're mostly African American. They're called drug addicts, drug dealers. A lot of times they don't get any proper care. They don't run labs. They go home, and because of the vaso-occlusive disorder, they die in many instances. And because of the fact they can't get proper treatment, they end up with permanent damages to the area of the body where they had the attack from the pain crisis. That's what distinguishes a sickle cell patient from other kinds of chronic pain patients, because when a sickle cell patient has a vaso-occlusive disorder and a pain crisis, let's say in the shoulder, if it's not treated properly, they're going to have permanent damage and pain in that shoulder. That's why it's so important to follow the NIH guidelines, which the doctors won't do.
Right.
They'll tell the patient and family, look, I'm not going to treat you because I'm afraid I'm going to lose my medical license if I give you opioids. And so the life expectancy for patients with sickle cell during the time of this opioid hysteria, I call it, has gone tremendously down from like around 45 years of age life expectancy down to 32 or 33.
Seems like this isn't
in Los Angeles area that has the worst situation in the country for patients who are sickle cell patients experiencing pain crisis, not getting adequate treatment and dying in record numbers.
It seems like this would be an area that a organization like the NAACP could do a class action lawsuit against hospitals that have acquired the deaths of sickle cell patients, and actually get our foot in the door as far as making it a nationally recognized problem.
Well, first of all, these organizations are not going to help chronic pain patients. They're not going to help the situation for doctors who are just horrendously mistreated, lied upon, their constitutional rights violated by law enforcement.
True.
And we have to do this ourselves. You're not going to be able to look to these organizations that come in with their capes and save you. Pain patients have to get organized. They have to raise their own money. They have to raise their own support. And they got to hire their own attorneys. Unfortunately, we're not realizing that. Even the physicians who are just horrendously mistreated, their lives ruined, their practices ruined, their license taken away, and they're totally innocent. And they're doctors who've been treating non-opioid abusers, chronic pain patients are not opioid abusers. And, you know, all the chronic pain patients get lumped into one category. And it's just terrible to hear how people are saying in the media that, you know, you take that narcotics for that pain is going to turn you to a junkie. So don't take those medications for chronic pain. That is the biggest lie and stereotype, and just it's just no cause to have a group of patients be lied on like that. Not government is lying.
Right. It's just
the
propaganda.
The number one cause of opioid deaths during the hysteria of the so-called chronic opioid crisis is not doctors' prescriptions. The number one cause of death from opioids is the fact that people are dying from street drugs, heroin, crystal meth, cocaine, and you have these pills that look just like a Percocet, just like a hydrocodone. They're manufactured in Mexico and China, and they're laced with fentanyl. The kind of fentanyl which is 1,000 times more potent than one can be written by doctor's prescriptions. These are the people who are dying from the opioid overdoses, not from doctor's prescription.
Right, and the ones that are dying from opioid overdoses are people, in many cases, who are being forced to the street by the government because their doctor's offices are shut down. We are back with Dr. Myers, the creator of Chronic Pain Patient Advocacy Week. Thank you, Dr. Myers, for sharing with us your expertise and knowledge. Now, please explain to the listeners why our advocacy of the chronic pain patient, their families, and the doctors that treat them is so necessary.
Well, first of all, we got to realize that no organization is going to come in with their cape and save us. Chronic pain patients and their families will understand what they're going through, have to get organized and save themselves. That's going to require advocacy, which is why we organize annual Chronic Pain Patients Advocacy Week, which always takes place in the last week of April. And that is the month of April was the month of the first two Americans in Pain, March on Washington, Silent No More, which took place in April. So the last week in April has been set aside as Pain Patients Advocacy Week. And we begin the process of organizing chronic pain patients to speak up for themselves, mostly and importantly, to contact their members of Congress. Everybody has 2 senators and 1 congressman. Everybody in terms of the state legislature has a state senator and a state representative. And everybody has a governor, and of course we all have a president. So it's going to be very important to not just write letters to these members of Congress and write letters to your state representative, your state senator, governor, and the president, but to get involved in terms of setting up a meeting with your elected officials to attend town hall meetings. If chronic pain patients don't advocate for themselves, nothing's going to change. And remember, you have a very evil situation with law enforcement in the criminal justice system. Arresting doctors, put them in jail. I mean, in my situation, I have been treating chronic pain patients who are non-opioid abusers, and the DEA and the Oklahoma State Board of Narcotics came in and accused me of doing things, overprescribing, not properly treating people in chronic pain, which is all a big pack of lies. I never realized just how evil and just how the violation of your rights. And remember, these law enforcement agencies are able to get your assets without you being found guilty. That's why they're so quick to give you, try to compare you with the charges with the RICO Act or with a drug dealer. Try to call you a person that's involved in racketeering.
Exactly.
A person that's involved in drug dealing and dispensing narcotics for non-medical purpose. Murder 1 and murder 2. These are all trumped up lies, because the government will use that to go after your assets to destroy your life and your practice.
Exactly.
We have to take a stand against that.
And
so many of my colleagues work by themselves, hire lawyers, pay thousands of dollars, and the lawyers can't do anything for them. I mean, they can go through legal proceedings, but because of how the district attorneys and the criminal justice system is set up, they can never win in court. That's why the court of public opinion becomes so important, because chronic pain patients and the doctors who treat them courageously need to stand up, get organized, and demand from Congress that they bring in the FBI, bring in the DEA, bring in the DC, and hold them accountable for so much that is being done against innocent physicians, affecting patients in chronic pain who can't get their medication because of the fact that the doctors have been taken away from them. And some of the doctors now will not even treat chronic pain patients because they're afraid of the repercussions. And they have fear they're going to lose their livelihood and their medical license. They won't stand up for the patient.
Right, and for just cause, because it will happen. As they take away chronic pain patient doctors that are treating, then when there is a doctor that does step up with compassion and takes those patients, then he end up with a lot of patients for chronic pain, and then they become a target. And so it's just they keep picking at the next doctor who steps up to the plate, and then the next one.
The problem is the doctors who step up to the plate got to get organized.
Exactly. Well, most of them step up to the plate.
Why do we put up with this garbage as doctors? You can't individually take on these government. You can't individually take on the criminal justice system. You can't individually take on these evil forces within the government. You got to get organized with other physicians and other advocates and fight against the evil, expose it. You got to be able to do what other groups have done, even under more horrendous circumstances, and fight the evil by getting organized, exposing it, and supporting one another.
Right, but most of the doctors that are out there don't realize the evil that they are facing. They are ignorant of the fact that they will be attacked. They think that if I follow the law as it is written, I'm safe, because the DEA and the boards of medicine all state that if you follow the law, you will be safe. This is written in all of the boards of medicine papers pertaining to chronic pain treatment. But the problem is it's all lies, and the doctors out there that are treating don't realize that it's all lies.
Well, as an African-American physician growing up black in America, I already know that the criminal justice system and law enforcement, some of those people are the most terrible human beings on the face of the earth. I mean, you can even call them human beings. They frame people, they lie, they cannot. So, I mean, as an African-American physician, I never did trust the criminal justice system. I don't trust law enforcement because of the things they'll do, because of one's skin color and what neighborhood they come from, and my experience growing up. So we got to get off this. I don't know why people think that they got to get in the reality fact that there's evil in this government through law enforcement. And we got to hold these folks accountable for their mess.
Exactly.
And we have to understand that unless we get together and get organized and get congressional hearings, and we don't get to our elected officials and demand that they not only listen to us, but take action on our behalf and expose evil, because evil persists where good men do nothing.
Exactly.
And so some of the demands that we have during chronic pain patient advocacy is that chronic pain patient bigotry and chronic pain patient abuse must no longer be tolerated in the delivery of medicine in the medical systems and the delivery of medicine in America. We have to understand also and demand that situations where even the pharmacists are told by law enforcement to turn doctors in or not fill prescriptions when they're not physicians. And even to the point now, the law enforcement is trying to pay physicians. Law enforcement is trying to pay pharmacists turn doctors in who they have no business even understanding what they're doing because they're not physicians. We have a situation where we need to get the government to publicly and strongly say publicly that the number one cause of opioid deaths in America are not prescriptions written by doctors, but what? Illegal street drugs. And doctors make easy targets.
Exactly.
Who's doing anything about these drugs being manufactured in Mexico and China?
Well, they can't
get
across
the border.
They can't touch the money of the cartels. That's the whole point of when they wrote the Controlled Substance Act. The whole point of it was to take the money from the cartels. But the problem is it's offshore and it's untouchable by the government. So that's why some smart U.S. attorney out there 15 or so years ago decided to turn the CSA against doctors because they can confiscate our assets because we're not smart enough to put our money offshore.
Yeah, but we tolerate the garbage.
Exactly.
We as physicians won't get organized, won't scream murder, won't use our resources and hold this corrupt law enforcement and criminal justice system working with state regulatory medical boards and expose and let the public understand what it is that they're doing to doctors who treat chronic pain.
And we even turn against our own because as the fact that I am a victim of this government illegality, I have doctors who address me on my website and address me on my YouTube productions and address me on Twitter and say the lies that the government said against me as if they're true. They don't realize that it's all government lies. And at some point in time, it's going to probably happen to them.
Well, that's why you have to have Chronic Pain Patient Advocacy Week. The public doesn't understand.
Exactly.
You got Dr. Henry Gupta, who lies. You got Dr. Oz, who lies. You got all these public figures, so-called trusted physicians in the public media who not only perpetrate the lies, but don't give an opportunity for chronic pain patients or doctors affected by a corrupt criminal justice system to speak and tell their stories. So this is why advocacy must be followed in organized efforts. If we don't do it ourselves, nothing is going to change. And you have an increased amount of suicides amongst people who are in chronic pain.
Right.
Because they don't have the options, they can't find physicians, and many of them are choosing suicide rather than live in chronic pain. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we found that situation with our veterans.
Yes.
They go off and fight in a war and serve their country. They would think they would get treatment in the VA for their chronic pain, but because of the opioid hysteria, many of the VA hospitals now will not treat chronic pain patients. And many of these patients and these brave heroes are dying because they choose suicide over living in chronic pain.
Right.
So we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of advocacy work to do. And we need to quit making excuses. Any other movement in the history of this country comes to courageous people who stand up against the evil. Whether you're talking about the civil rights movement, the women's suffrage movement, whatever movement in America where the government and corruptions, racism, discrimination. And chronic pain patients are the most mistreated, misaligned patients in the entire healthcare system. They're the most bigoted, treated, and until we stand up as chronic pain patients and say we were not going to tolerate this anymore, until we stand up and say that I don't like the way I'm treated, I am not a drug addict. It's amazing how they try to put chronic pain patients and drug addicts and make them synonymous.
Right.
I mean, that's the biggest, boldest lie that the government puts out there.
Exactly.
There's no correlation between a person who has an addictive problem with drugs and a patient who's a chronic pain patient who's a non-opioid abuser. I mean, 70 to 80% of all the people who abuse prescription drugs have never even seen a physician.
Right.
They buy the drugs off the street. They steal them from family members. They rob pharmacies, and yet the government wants to portray these lies that a person who is an addict to their medication is because they were chronic pain patients and they took these opioid medications and got hooked on them. Well, they were addicts in the first place. They had a problem with the addictive personalities and problems before they even took their first pain pill. We're hearing from the non-opioid chronic pain patient abusers. Why isn't the media talking about chronic pain patients who are non-opioid abusers? Why is it that their stories are not being told?
Because it's...
Why do we have a group of people, because a young person died of a drug overdose, going to blame physicians who treat chronic pain patients for the fact that their child overdosed on some prescription drugs? I mean, people want to be irresponsible to their addictive personalities and kill themselves. You can't put that on a doctor. We have to realize that if we don't speak up and tell the truth, and I'm going to tell you something. You grow up black in America, you understand the corruption of the criminal justice system. I can share with you experiences I went through as a young man growing up in the black community in Milwaukee with the police. These folks are not going to be held accountable until we hold them accountable.
Correct. And, of course, that's only through education, and that's where we have to get the word out.
Through Pain Patients Advocacy Week, we are making 6 demands. 1, pain patient bigotry and pain patient abuse must no longer be tolerated in the healthcare delivery system throughout America. 2, the leading cause of death from the abuse of opioids is illegal street drugs, including heroin, crystal methamphetamine, cocaine, fentanyl-laced illicit drug manufactured in Mexico and China, not prescription drugs written by physicians. Chronic pain patients who are non-opioid abusers are not the cause of the opioid crisis in America. We demand that this be clearly articulated by the government. 3, chronic pain patients are finding it increasingly difficult to find physicians who would treat them, leading to increased suicide, pain, and suffering. Chronic pain patients who are non-opioid abusers demand that the government, law enforcement, the criminal justice system, and state medical boards stop impeding their medical treatment by intimidating and persecuting physicians who compassionately treat them. 4, CDC guidelines for prescribing opioids for chronic pain must be discontinued and replaced by more scientific treatment recommendations. The CDC guidelines clearly state that sickle cell anemia patients in a pain crisis must be treated according to the NIH guidelines, including opioid medications in adequate doses, hydration, and oxygen. The morbidity or mortality rate among sickle cell anemia patients has increased because treating physicians in hospitals and emergency rooms refuse to properly treat them during a pain crisis for fear of losing their medical license by properly administering adequate narcotic pain medications during a pain crisis. 5, we demand a cessation and moratorium and investigation by the United States Congress concerning the persecution and criminalization of compassionate physicians who treat chronic pain patients by law enforcement, the criminal justice system, and regulatory state medical boards. This especially includes the over-prosecution of black and other physicians of color who treat chronic pain patients. 6, chronic pain patients find it reprehensible that pharmacists are being allowed to practice medicine when they are encouraged by the government to refuse to fill prescriptions of narcotics by licensed physicians. It has now been proposed that pharmacists be paid by the government for turning the names of physicians in who they feel are overprescribing medications. Chronic pain patients find such despicable, unprofessional, and immoral actions towards physicians who write prescriptions in the treatment of non-opioid chronic pain patients unacceptable.
Thank you, Dr. Myers, for those, and also for people who are interested in having those to print off or to pass on to their representatives. Dr. Myers, would you please give us the locations of your websites that they might find those written down?
Well, I founded 2 organizations. One was the National Pain Patients Coalition, www.painpatientscoalition.com. And that is the organization of chronic pain patients helping chronic pain patients, www.painpatientscoalition.com. And then I founded an organization for physicians in terms of advocacy, the American Pain Institute, www.americanpaininstitute.org, O-R-G.
Thank you. And I will also have these available and also the links to Dr. Myers' sites on my website, www.doctorsofcourage.org.
And that is a very important website. We have to stand up and fight it. When you hear this radio programs all during this week, become a part of the effort with the Nat'l Pain Patients Coalition. Join us. Get involved in your state with other chronic pain patients. Physicians, give me a call and get active in standing up for what's right. Be brave and courageous. I mean, a number of you have had your whole lives taken away from you, your whole practice taken away from you. What you got to lose?
Exactly. Let me ask you a question here, or bring something to people's attention. I belong to several chronic pain patient Facebook websites or Facebook pages and groups, and one of the ladies in chronic pain made the comment on one of them when she was asked to become active. Her reply was, "When I lose my medicine, I will." Now, would you respond to that, Dr. Myers, and tell this lady and other people like that have that response that they really aren't going to do anything until it affects them? Would you please respond to that?
Well, I can guarantee you will lose your medicine.
Exactly.
And don't think for 1 minute that the government has your best interest in mind. Don't think you'll be able to find a doctor when they raid your physician for treating you, an innocent man who's treating you under the best that medicine can offer. Don't think that when you no longer get your medicine, or you come to have an appointment with your doctor, he's going to cut your medicine in half because he's afraid of what may happen to him by the DEA, the law enforcement, the state regulatory boards. You will be affected. So you're getting your medicine now, but I can tell you, you won't be getting it forever, and you're going to be in the situation where not only will you not be able to get your medicine, but you'll be confronted with chronic, relentless pain, and you'll be thinking suicidal thoughts. Stand up and fight for your rights now.
Right. Another thing that is ongoing in the Facebook groups are people that say, well, I write letters and I write letters and I write letters, and all I get back are these form letters from my representative. Can you please address the fact that the way that they are trying to talk to their representative is really not going to get them anywhere, and why, and what the best approach is?
Well, the best approach is to contact your everybody has 2 U.S. senators and 1 congressman. When you write your United States Senator, your congressman, make sure you call the office first in Washington, D.C., and find the name of the staff person that is over health issues. Get that staff person's email address. You don't have to write them a letter. You can email it, but you got to get the staff person who each congressional office puts in charge of health issues. Remember, what do lawmakers do? They pass laws. So each of those congressional offices have a person that's over the legislation that the congressman writes and stands up for. Get in touch with those people who are doing the legislation in the area of medical concerns. That's who you send a letter to and you interact with. Because remember, you're a member of Congress, you're going to try to get to him. He's sitting on 4 or 5 committees. He has all kinds of things going on, and they have to be briefed by that member of their staff in the area of chronic pain. Everybody needs to pick up the phone right now. Dial 202-224-3121. Talk to your 2 United States senators and your congressmen and tell them about Pain Patients Advocacy Week coming up. Tell them that you're a member or supporter of Chronic Pain Patients Advocacy Week, along with the advocacy group you work with, whether it's Facebook group, but you got to let these members of Congress know that pain patients are coming together as a group to advocate for their fair treatment, to take a stand against the evil of law enforcement, criminal justice, and these medical boards who are persecuting their doctors and taking their livelihoods away for being innocently treating them for chronic pain. Get active. You can always reach me at 662-392-2016. Along with being a physician, I'm also an ordained Baptist minister. I am the first ordained and commissioned medical missionary to America's poorest region, the Mississippi Delta, in the history of the African American Church. I've been an advocate my whole life. Call me, 662-392-2016, and let's get involved with Pain Patients Advocacy Wear your red ribbons, support of the treatment of chronic pain in America.
You are also willing, are you not, Dr. Myers, to attend any congressional briefing that any of the folks listening to this program can get their congressman to arrange, are you not?
Well, the problem is you got to get enough chronic pain patients to have contact with their congressmen and their senators and know the staff persons who are over health issues so we can have a congressional briefing.
Right.
Now, people who write letters who think if the letters don't do any good, I know members of Congress. I know many of them on a first-name basis. They don't do anything till they get 1,000 letters, phone calls, or emails. So, yeah, you may get a form letter back, but that's 999 to go.
Right.
So you got to realize they're keeping tabs of the number of letters, emails, and phone calls come in. And many of them don't do anything till they get 1,000. So don't think that your letter is being ignored. Let me explain something else. When it comes to the House of Representatives, they got to go every 2 years and get reelected. You got these folks got to come back to you every 2 years and seek you out and your support to get elected. Just like you see town hall meetings where people are concerned about their health insurance. I mean, it's going in and where those members of Congress are. We got the same thing with chronic pain. Don't think for 1 minute that this system that we set up in this country is going to move except this through activism. I know many of you are ill, you can't get out of your bed, and you used to be able to get out of your bed because you got adequate pain treatment. Now you don't. And so only thing you have is your computer and phone. Use it. And if you want to get involved in Pain Patients Advocacy Week, tie some red ribbons around your trees and bushes. Call out the local media. They'll do a story on why that ribbon is around your tree or bush. There is a press release that you can get from the webpage. Distribute it. Send it to all the newspapers. Send it to the radio station. Contact me. We'll get a spokesperson for you. It's time for us to come together and put an end to this evil that has caused the deaths of so many innocent people. Because remember, chronic pain patients are not drug addicts. Chronic pain patients, most of them have legitimate reasons for getting their pain medicine, and they're non-opioid abusers. Don't let the government, the media, and these people who are elected office continue to lie on you, stereotype you, and destroy your lives. Stand up! Fight for your rights. You always have the resources of the National Pain Patients Coalition. Call me. Contact me. Go to the website, www.painpatientscoalition.com. We'll put you in touch with other pain patients. If police are stopping you and doing things to you that are illegal, remember, that is illegal what they're doing to you. They cannot violate your constitutional rights.
Thank you, Dr. Myers. Here's hoping they got the message.